Well, that's the president yesterday evening. Now, a team of ministers will brief the media on the details of government interventions to curb the spread of coronavirus. President Cyril Ramaphosa last night announced that all schools will be closed from Wednesday and gatherings of more than 100 people are prohibited. For more on this story, let's now cross live to our colleague Chriselda Lewis, who's at the Union Buildings. Chriselda, let me start off by congratulating you on sterling coverage of the return of those South Africans from Wuhan on Saturday.
Well, thank you very much, Desiree. It was indeed a team effort.
What's the latest where you are?
Well, Desiree, we're expecting at 10 o'clock this morning about 14 ministers to converge here at the Department of International Relations in Pretoria to give basically details of government's plan on how to deal with the spread of the coronavirus, of course, following what some have described yesterday as President Cyril Ramaphosa's bold and decisive move on how to deal with the coronavirus in the country. We're expecting a bit more details about how all of this is going to unfold. Some of the ministers were expecting here are the Ministers of Health, Transport, as well as the Department of International Relations and Tourism as well. Tourism, I mentioned a bit earlier on, Desiree, was one of the areas that has been highly affected already. So we know that in the first quarter, South Africa had already gone into a recession. It's expected to stay that way due to massive power outages, for example, in South Africa, as well as the impact of the coronavirus. A number of departments, Desiree, will be affected as a result of the actions taken by the South African government last night. Much criticism of the president as well, some saying that he acted way too late. You would know that South Africa's cases, confirmed cases of the coronavirus have continued to rise, now sitting at 61. So we're expecting to hear exactly how all of this is expected to impact the economy. You would know that South Africa has great moves for job creation, what impact this will have on job creation in the medium to long term, what this will mean in terms of job losses. So the tourism sector, the economy as well, are some of the issues that are expected to take center stage here. How South Africa would be able to mitigate the impact of the spread of the coronavirus in the country. So with the closure of the ports as well, what that would mean in future. So we're also expecting, we're not really confirmed in terms of whether the finance minister will be here as well, but you heard President Cyril Ramaphosa indicating a financial assistance that will be granted to ensure that we're effectively able to deal with the containment of the spread of the coronavirus. So that's what we're expecting at 10 o'clock here this morning. Much more detailed program in terms of what government is expected to do, Desiree.
No doubt business and the economy will be affected, but it's important to look on the brighter side in terms of the bigger picture of trying to stem the spread, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, absolutely, Desiree. I've heard some commentary since last night. Some of, those who are in the political commentary landscape indicating that what President Cyril Ramaphosa did yesterday was in the national interest. Recall, South Africa could not sit by and allow its stance to remain the same. What South Africa needed to be seen to be doing was to have a more decisive program in place to deal with the spread of the coronavirus. You'd recall that many countries around the world have long implemented travel bans, for example, and many have said, why is South Africa still sticking to the programs that it had in place as if it was business as usual? So the president had really taken much criticism pertaining to that. So he needed to be seen to be more decisive in what he decided to implement yesterday. Of course, you know that all of that followed the special cabinet meeting that he had in Tshwane yesterday. So he needed to be seen to be more decisive. South Africa needed to be seen to be one of the latest countries who are implementing measures to contain the spread of the coronavirus. So, Desiree, they often say when there are challenges at home, you need to close the door and deal with those challenges as a family inside. So South Africa certainly seemed to have, having done that last night, to allow all the ministers themselves who are going to brief the media today to give a more detailed plan of what all of this will mean going forward.
Chriselda, the composition of this interministerial committee, obviously the same as it has been. The difference now is that they've been given further power in terms of the declaration of a disaster situation in the country. What changes now?
Desiree, essentially everything, because most of the ministers who will occupy these seats here behind me are ministers who are obviously going to articulate, for example, on how the tourism sector is going to be affected, in particular transport as well, the economy as well, in terms of finance as well, what exactly South Africa will pump in to ensure that, programs that need to kick in as soon as possible, that certainly does happen. So most of the departments who will be represented here are departments who will outline, much more detail about what government's plan is. So, many people are saying, for example, with the Department of Education, schools will be closed from Wednesday until just over the Easter holidays. So if you look at that, for example, Desiree, simple questions that one asks is about what happens to matriculants, what happens to the school program going forward. Is there going to be a catch-up time that will be implemented at a later stage? So a lot of concerns pertaining to that. Public transport, what happens in this instance with regard to the economy? How are we going to mitigate a situation where in the fourth quarter already, as I indicated, South Africa slipped into a recession? It's likely to stay that way because of a number of issues, including power outages in the country. We're not really in a good situation in terms of the economy in this country. So a massive blow with what we've had to do, closing the ports, and tourists potentially who have wanted to come into the country, all of those now, visas have been granted, been revoked. So a massive impact here. But in the interim, Desiree, certainly what needed to happen is certainly the stance that was taken by the President after all that consultation yesterday.
I suppose we'll get that detail later on around 10 a.m. this morning. Chriselda Lewis, thank you so much for that update. Blaine?